What's up, guys? Alex here, ajnashville.com. What are you
With
smirking
Luis.
for? With Luis. Luis. It depends on what day it is today. Today's a Luis day.
It's
Are you
every
going out
day
for
is a
Mexican
Luis
food later?
day.
You're going
Every
out.
day is a Luis day.
It depends on what mood is at the front, or should we
No,
say?
it just depends on who I'm talking to, because then they're like, "How do you spell Luis?"
I heard somebody ask that earlier today.
Yeah, Taco Bell.
Yeah. Was that where it was at?
It was at Taco Bell.
Yeah. How do you spell it? They should know. That should be like the native tongue there, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
I
I
don't
didn't see any Mexicans in there.
Well,
Any
it gotta be
Hispanic
Mexican.
people.
It is a taco joint. Look, hey, that's the thing I've joked about in the past, though. I'm like, you could walk into a Taco Bell and there ain't a Mexican in sight there. It's not authentic by any sense of the mean. But
Zero. Not even the tortillas.
well, and that's something crazy too. Jack in the Box. Do you ever eat Jack in the Box tacos?
I actually used to make them because I worked at Jack in the Box when I was 16 years old.
So the Jack in the Box tacos,
So yes,
they're filled with Lord knows what.
soy.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's probably worse than soy.
I think it's soy meat.
So they're filled with Lord knows what, and there's just this craving for them. And they've been $1 for like 20 years, and they've just went up. I think they're $1.25 for two of them now. But they used to be $1. You roll up there, and for some reason, that was the go-to, especially when I moved. So when I lived in California, my mom used to take me by there at night when she'd get off work.
Right.
We'd have that. Then I moved to Iowa. Iowa didn't have Jack in the Box, so I didn't get my fix. But the day I moved to Tennessee, there was a Jack in the Box 2 blocks from my house, and I rolled right up there, and I'm like, "Yep, this is what it is." And they taste the exact same. They've never changed that recipe.
They taste old.
They taste old. Yeah, no, they don't taste old. They taste great. You know what they taste really good with? Beer.
Ranch.
Beer. No, beer. When you drink a lot of beer, you're like, oh my God, these things are awesome. So
alcohol, period.
yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know how tacos and...
Well, what time did you normally go to Jack in the Box?
Oh, it was early in the morning.
In the morning?
Yeah,
Jesus.
late at night, early in the morning, 2 a.m., 3 a.m.
Oh, okay.
4 a.m.
So
sometimes. Yeah.
It was after drinking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it was after
When I'm
drinking.
saying early in the morning...
So that's why they taste so good.
No, because they taste good in the afternoon, too. There's been times where, like, especially when I was broke and didn't have any money, and everyone else is like, we're going to Buffalo Wild Wings, we're doing this. I'm like, I'm going to Jack in the Box because that's the best taco you can get for $1.
I can get five nuggets for $1.
Dude, you could get 2 tacos for $1.
Well.
And taco sauce and a cup of water, and you're good to go.
Free cup
Bunch
of water.
of napkins so you can throw them in the glove box. You're ready to rock. So, but I mean...
So that's what our podcast is about today. Jack in the Box and Taco Bell.
Right. So the comparison of... it's kind of like the battle of what is it, Chick-fil-A and Popeyes?
That's true.
It's not
here.
that bad, though.
No.
I mean, you're not going to go to war. It's not like it's Jesus' tacos, like it was, what is it, God's chicken or something they refer to Chick-fil-A as. You don't even know.
No, I don't.
That's how you can tell you're
Kinda
not
lost.
from, that's not, you can tell you're not from the deep South when you don't know that. Because that's what people refer to Chick-fil-A as, is God's chicken.
Really?
You never heard that?
Nope.
So we were going to do a podcast on something else today.
No, we are.
Oh, we're still doing it.
We're just leading up to it.
Okay, well.
We're comparing here.
Comparing. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I like the way you're going
Comparison.
with this. So comparison-wise, as most of you know, Luis and I our trade, our thing that allows us to eat tacos, basically, is the fact that we're in the mortgage industry. And, the big comparison that you always hear is when people are buying new homes is the builder's lender versus a regular lender. I don't even know if that's inaccurate, if you would call us a regular lender. But
Oh, we're above a regular lender.
I would
can
agree
just
with
tell you
that.
much.
I would definitely agree with that. But we ran into some situations here recently, and the situations are startling when you actually take time to look at it. As a consumer, when you talk about lenders, there's a blend that everybody is the same. Let me just find the lowest rate, lowest fees. That's who we're going to go with, or who's going to give me the biggest credit. One thing we were taught as children is what? Nothing's free, right? Nobody ever gives us something. Nobody's going to come to you and say, hey, even in prison. I mean, I watch these prison shows sometimes, and the guys are like, yeah, I give him a candy bar, but now he owes me 6 of them. There's a cost to everything. And so the same thing goes with lending, and I hate to use those two analogies together, but it's almost criminal, some of the things that you hear go on when it pertains to the builder's lender. And this isn't every builder's lender. This isn't every builder out there. This isn't every lender out there. So bear that in mind. I'm not speaking as a whole. I'm just speaking in general. But, you get somebody excited to buy a home. They walk in, what happens? Are you pre-qualified?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is typically yes or no, or whatever the case may be. And some builders require that even if you are pre-qualified, you get pre-qualified by their person, which is fine. They're protecting the fact that somebody's going under contract and they're building a home. They're custom building a home out in some cases for these people, so they want to make sure they're approved. And as a whole, I don't see a huge issue with that. Where the issue comes in,
do.
Well, I get it.
You have a buyer's agent that's representing the purchaser.
Oh yeah,
that is with them,
and they have a pre-approval letter in most cases.
Right.
So they've towed it in. But here's why I get that, and here's why I don't frown at that too much. It's because what if that person is not good at their job and they just handed out a pre-approval letter, and now this builder goes out and they spend $200,000-$400,000 building a property to this person's specs and to their liking and everything else, and all of a sudden they get to the end of it and they don't close, So I get that to some degree.
That client loses that earnest money.
Right, and in some cases that earnest money is a lot. Mm-hmm. We've had people in upwards of $25,000-$30,000 worth. Heck, we had one client with $50,000 worth of earnest money that was held because they elected to pick upgrades that were kind of above the scope, and so they were required to provide additional funds for that. But when you look at getting pre-qualified or looking if that person is qualified, that's a very simple process. I had a client where we almost had to threaten legal action because the builder's lender was so aggressive at going after this person that it almost frightened her. It was something that it made her feel really bad about the purchase of the home. It created anxiety in her case. Like, she told the builder on multiple occasions, hey, I already have a lender. We don't care, we don't care what your lender's going to offer. I've already got somebody. I understand this. And this particular lender kept pouncing on this client. And she didn't know what to do. She finally reached out to me. She's like, I don't know what to do anymore. Can you help me? And so I CC'd our legal department in with the builder, the builder's lender, and the client, and said, at this point forward, we're asking that you no longer reach out to our client. She has told you on multiple occasions that she is not using you. She is not using your services. Please pull her off your list. And it was a little more in depth than that, obviously, but I'm not trying to spend 5 minutes of what was actually said. And eventually, that person reached back out. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, it was an error. We accidentally continued to reach out to her. I think that's BS, because getting a lender in most cases to reach out to a client in the first place is almost impossible. But to get them to reach out to a client that they've been told to not reach out to, that to me seems pretty fishy. Mm-hmm. So, you have situations like that where the lender is aggressively doing these things. But here's the thing. I assume the average consumer right now is sitting back and saying, well, what's the problem with that? Here's the problem. When you think of builder's lender, what do you think of? Whose best interest do they have in mind? Is it the client?
No, it's theirs.
It's the builders, right? Because the builder is who is feeding them on a consistent basis. So if you take a puppy and you put a bowl of food on your doorstep and you feed that puppy every day till that puppy becomes an adult, what's going to happen? That puppy's eventually going to grow loyalty to that home and more than likely protect that house. Even if somebody was to try to feed that puppy later on in life, that puppy's going to be loyal to that. The puppy in this situation is the lender. The bowl of food is the builder. So now there's some loyalty there, and hey, you feed me, I'll take care of you. Up until the point where here recently we had a client, 3 appraisals, okay? We had a client appraisal, which came in $30,000 short, which in turn, the builder said, let our mortgage company, our in-house, our funded mortgage company that we feed and that we pay for and that we own, let our mortgage company order the appraisal, and we'll see what it comes in at, and we'll negotiate from there. So then they ordered theirs, and guess what? Magically, it's like the fairy godmother came down and said, this appraisal came in at value. And what did it do? It came in at value.
It came at value. Here's
the funny thing. So the agent and I were looking through the reports, and as we're looking through it, I'm looking at these pictures. I'm like, God, these feel familiar,
They got the right same angle.
What's going on? They got same angle, same lighting. I'm like, man, that I remember that front door being just like that in that last one. And so I pull up the other appraisal, and just like I suspected, the pictures and everything were exactly the same. The team of appraisers that did this not only worked in the same office, but was a husband and wife team. So here's the thing. You have a husband and wife team, okay? You got a girlfriend, right? Is there much that you wouldn't do together that eventually you wouldn't talk about? You know, if you guys did something, let's say a job together, would you talk about some of the common things you may have seen, especially if you're asking to use some of the same materials that they've used on a prior job? What I'm getting at here is,
let's just transfer this over and change the numbers.
right, change the numbers to fit the narrative. And I'm assuming that what was thought is, okay, this other lender has lost this deal. It's now with this builder's lender. We'll deliver the value, because if not, we're not going to fit this builder's profile anymore.
How much was that appraisal, by the way?
So the first one was $415, and then the builder did theirs. I'm sure it was $400 or $500. And then we ordered another one, and we ordered one, and we paid for it. Now, here's the thing. We paid for that because we looked at the first appraisal, and we said, there's a lot of errors here. This wasn't something that came in and we said, hey, this is spotless. This thing's airtight. Let's use this. On the surface, it did look airtight because there was other background things that took place that we didn't see on that surface level. And that's some of the red flag things that underwriting does in the background. When they pull the appraisal in, there's a system that says, hey, this seems way off, or this seems correct, or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. So we reached back out to that appraiser and we said, hey, can you make these adjustments or justify these particular items that currently appear on this appraisal? And the response to that was no, not changing anything. And so we're like, oh, okay. You don't have to change anything. We're not only blackballing you off our list because everything you've done seems unethical. You're not willing to flex or do the things that need to be done, at least to make the report one that's presentable that the client has paid for. So now we're paying for a new appraisal. We get a new appraisal done, and guess what? It comes in short again. Not $30,000 short this time, though. It comes in $20,000 or $18,000 short.
Yeah, it was 18.
So it's still short, okay? Now, there's no way you can tell me that two appraisers came in with two different values, both short of what they were asking for with this property, and then this rogue appraiser who happens to have a relationship with the other appraiser who it came in short with suddenly delivers that value, and there's nothing fishy going on here. What's the probability of that? Slim? None?
Well, there's...
if
you're talking about a lender's or a builder,
right,
probably pretty good. It's a pretty good chance. But if you're talking about like just a home, a used home,
right,
I don't think you have the same opportunity to get the same appraiser. Well, the same appraiser's office.
And the biggest thing is, too, we're talking about a home that was located in a city that was a little bit of a drive from the city where the appraiser's office came out of. So if you know the demographics, or not the demographics, but the geographical layout of the two areas, one where the appraisal was done and one where the appraiser's office is, and all the appraisers in between that section, you'd look at it and say, wow, this is super slim that it would take place like this. But it did. And I don't doubt that this appraiser didn't get hired at random. I think they probably did. But what I do doubt is that appraiser didn't become the puppy going to the dog bowl on the doorstep to get their food and saying, I'm always fed when I come here. I'm going to eat and go do my thing. So, we look at those challenges and we look at the fact that there's no reason why one appraiser came in so short, wouldn't make adjustments when the second appraisal was done, and then the third appraiser comes in short as well. Now, this client, out of frustration, just paid the asking price. This was a home that she planned on living in for a long time. She paid the asking price. She came out of pocket extra money. She paid over value for it, which if a person loves the home, that's up to them to do that. Initially it was against my recommendation to do so, but she knows that, hey, this is a property that she's going to stay in for a long time.
Right.
And so it makes sense in that situation. It's like anything else. If you see a car that you have to have, you're willing to flex a little bit but see, a car is a depreciating asset. In a home,
the second you drive off,
you don't even have to drive off. Like, you're signing paperwork and they're like, boom, we ain't taking this back. But at least a home has the probability or possibility of going up in value. So there's a potential to break even and then exceed and have more value. But when we look at those things, we look at interest rates that are being provided. Let's say seller comes, or the builder's agent says, we're going to give you $5,000 worth of closing cost. Once again, nothing's free, right? So that $5,000 comes from somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you're relatively new to the industry, but you still have an understanding of where that comes from, right? Mm-hmm. So when we look at a rate sheet, and this almost sounds like an interrogation, like I've got you on the stand. So, Mr. Luis, when you look at a rate sheet, tell me, what do you see? What you see is different rates, right? Exactly. I see numbers and decimal points. But you see the different spreads in rates. And what those spreads are, because of laws that were passed back in 2009, is those spreads are either credits or debits to the client based on whatever rate it is that they're going to receive. And so where the rate or where the closing cost typically comes from is the increase of rate. So you see somebody that may qualify for, and for numbers' sake, we're just tossing numbers out there. This is just educational example of a situation. If you take a $200,000 loan at 3.875, you're going to pay about $43 more a month if that same loan is done at 4.25. The difference is in a lot of cases, the builder is saying we're going to pay XYZ in closing costs, not the builder, but the builder's lender, and that's usually padded within that interest rate. Now, there are some great builders out there, John Mayer Builders here in Spring Hill. He will pay a certain dollar amount towards your closing costs no matter who you use. That, to me, is a great amount of integrity. When you say, you know what, I don't care who you use, we have this built in the price, go ahead and use who you want, we're going to pay $5,000 towards your closing costs, or whatever that number may be. Like, that's when you know that it's a legitimate deal. But when they try to pull it and say, if you don't use our person, you're no longer getting that deal, that's where you start seeing some crazy and some funky things go on. And with that builder that we were talking about in particular, that was the case with them as well. So when I look at that scenario, and this is just coming from years of experience, when I look and I see an appraisal that in my opinion was inflated, with the possibility of a builder that's willing to throw somebody into a loan where the rate may be a little bit higher than the one they deserve or the one they qualify for in order to pay for closing costs, that person is then so upside down jumping into that is it truly a credit? Is it truly a benefit? Is that $5,000 in closing costs worth being...
You're completely screwing the customer.
You're in this scenario, or in this example that we used a minute ago, if you're $18,000 upside down unknowingly when you're walking into a home, how much of a benefit is that?
Me, I would not feel good about the transaction at all. I would feel stuck because I'm about to lose $50,000.
But you wouldn't know. Here's the thing. You wouldn't know. That's the best part about it. And when I say best, I use that in sarcasm. That's the best part about it is nobody knows. This particular builder that we're talking about has been spoken about in multiple class action suits and has actually been brought in front of the Senate in conversation, not physically in front of the Senate, but in conversation about their practices. This particular builder has a long history of having practices like this, and then they switched names, and then they kind of carried the torch from there. So this isn't new news to them. This is something that's existed for a while, but the thing is, for a lot of these home buyers, this is a new builder to them. It's a pretty good sized builder.
Until 2 years later, your house doesn't appraise.
Well, your house falls apart.
Yeah.
The quality of some of these things that are done, and that's the other thing. From a buyer's standpoint, don't ever close on a home that you don't feel comfortable with the condition that the home's in at the day of closing. Because I've seen situations, and this is with other builders, and I'm sure people have heard me talk about this in the past in scenarios and examples, but I've seen situations where the world was promised to somebody, where they say, Luis, just close and we'll fix that gap in your cabinetry and the wave in your floor and the dent in your ceiling. Don't worry about it. Just close and we'll get it done. And guess what happens? It takes 18 months to get it done. So at the end of the day, you have to protect your investment. As people that are in the mortgage industry, the biggest thing is we've gotten to a point where we're kind of fishing from the same pond. Everyone's, the rates are coming from the same area. Everybody is producing just about the same fees and things like that. So it's not like people are out there to just say, hey, this is the Wild West. Pre-2008, it was a lot different. Origination and yield spread and SRP and things like that were built in to be profitable. Those things are gone. There used to be a time where a person could make an extreme amount of money on a loan. Those things are gone. That's not saying
it makes it more fair.
Well, and that's the thing. That was the intention of the bill that was passed, to put the lender and the client on the same side of the table. No longer was the lender playing this kind of poker game where they're hiding their cards and waiting for the buyer to say something in order to throw a card down. Mm-hmm. that has its pluses and negatives to it. You know, if you're in a situation, and Brian Stevens from the National Real Estate Post has talked about this a couple times, in a situation where you need to flex your commission or something like that a little bit in order to, you know, if you got a buyer that doesn't have the money for, you know, closing costs or something like that, you're able to do so. Or if you miss the lock and it winds up costing the client more, well, back in the commission days, you could adjust your commission in order to make up for that cost difference without losing a huge chunk. Because, you know, nowadays it's either it's a big chunk or you get your full commission, and there's no gray area in between. Before, there was a little bit of flexibility there.
Okay.
I'm sure it was a nightmare for accounting, but it was what was best, at least that small portion for the client. So
Right.
we almost need to find a combination of that. But, you know, that kind of goes into a whole nother topic of builder and lender and everything else. So now I do want to caution one thing, and I do want to say one thing. I'm actually an approved lender for a very large builder, and we don't offer any incentive, anything like that, additional, because we don't think it's right that a person pays an extra amount every month to make up for whatever credit they have. You know, if you take the higher rate over a 30-year term, you're talking about a big bump in payment. So, you know, we're seeing this thing from both sides of the fence, and nothing pains me more than when I see a person and they're just hooked on that $5,000 or $2,000 or whatever the case may be. And that's all they're laser focused on, and then they get to the closing table and find out it's something different, you know. Speaking of that, one last thing, and then I'll close this thing up. Large lender out there. I'm not going to say their name, but they are known for what they do for veterans. They're known for helping veterans with things like insurance and banking and, you know, all kinds of a large spectrum of things. Mm-hmm. And we recently closed a client that used to work for him. And his words were, those places don't give a shit about the veteran. They don't care. Literally, you get yelled at for being on the phone too long with a veteran to try to help them out with the situation. So they're not there to help a veteran. And in addition to that, I've had scenarios where we've had clients come back and be like, they were charging me an extra $5,000 that they initially didn't say they were going to charge me for the rate or for whatever the case may be. So my advice when it comes to stuff like this is do a little bit of investigation. Find out who's the best person to work with in the scope of things that you choose to do. I mean, there's been certain scenarios where we're not the best person to work with. And that's okay because we're not a one-size-fits-all company. We're not a one-size-fits-all lender. You know, we'd like to think we can work with everybody. But
I think we can if we can get on the same level.
As long as there's the willingness to understand. Because that's the thing. Like, I don't gain anything by telling you misinformation, you know.
Right.
But we have had those situations where people are like, you guys are a different breed of lender, you know. And that feels good to hear, but you just don't see it. It's kind of one of those things that when you're in your own little hole, it's not like you're looking out, seeing what everyone else is doing. You're paying attention to what you're doing, and you're driving forward, and you're getting stuff done. So,
Right.
you know, do your due diligence, ask around, deal with people who have had experience maybe with those lenders, you know. This way you can get a firm understanding. The driving part of, you know, let's get the most money out of the lender. If you're in a position where that's kind of what you have to do because you don't have the additional funds to close, do it. Just know it's going to cost you more money in the long run. You know, it's not my advice to do it, but if you have no other option, get it done. So, Luis, any closing? I mean, dude, you're brand new to all this pretty much, and so you've kind of been in the Rolls Royce for a while.
No, I've been in the Rolls Royce.
You know,
of lenders.
You get to see
I'm not having to start on the bottom.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, and everybody that we work with has that understanding that we're a team. It's not a hierarchy. It's not a, you know, this isn't something where it's like, oh, go deal with my bottom guy. I'm up here. You know, this is something where it's always we're cream. We float together. We sink together. We do whatever we got to do. So, but you've got to experience some of these different scenarios. So the ones we're talking about
firsthand.
Yeah. So, anyways, I hope everyone's having a nice weekend. It's raining out there currently, so hopefully that clears up here shortly.
It's Friday.
It
the
is
13th,
Friday.
baby.
Oh, yeah. Lots of stuff going on Friday. Speaking of deals, never mind. We won't even get into that. So, all right. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.